I'm reviewing through this and I see a presentation on the deep well injection over at the Heart of Florida landfill. I was honestly surprised that I hadn't heard anything about it. I reached out to staff. We hadn't heard anything about it. And so I was looking forward to seeing what this was all about over here. And it got worse. When the presentation got started, the Sumter County folks showed up very frustrated that they couldn't get any traction with trying to get this thing stopped. And the longer that I sat there and listened to the questions and answers, the more frustrated I got with this whole process. And then when Bob and I had a chance to sit down and have a conversation, he's got extensive experience with these things, and he got more frustrated or outraged that that it had even gotten to this point where they're already constructing a well. Let me walk through it. Of course, I won't go through the whole leachate thing. I did reach out to Ken Cheek and asked him about, how we treat it. Citrus County's doing it the way that it should be done. It's collected, the ground is protected, it's collected, it's piped to our treatment plants, our water treatment plants. And I think, Ken, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but he said treating that stuff is about 5 times more difficult than it is to treat wastewater. So the plan over there is to build this pipe. Starts with a very large pipe and then ultimately ends at 2,500 to 3,000 feet down. It ends in a 15-inch diameter pipe where the plan is, rather than treating the 1 million gallons a month that they do right now, I believe they haul it off. I'm not sure. I think they truck it. But instead of trucking it, they're going to pump it down into the ground, down below the upper and lower Floridan Aquifer. Step 1 is to build this exploratory well, which they've already gotten permission for that. Step 2 is once it's completed, then they gather data, they do their testing, and they go to DEP for their final permit to begin pumping this down there. And once they start pumping, they only have to be inspected a minimum of every 5 years. And so this thing starts pumping month after month. And DEP has told one of our elected officials that it's the leachate, when it's pumped down there, isn't treated. I assume that they at least treated it, but they just start pumping this stuff untreated down there. During the presentation, the gentleman that presented to us, and to his credit, he knew this stuff very well, had been involved in these injection wells down in South Florida. He was not involved in this project at all. He was just there to explain it nicely to the board. Well, he talked about this current down there, and he didn't know. I asked, I said, well, there's a current. It's beginning someplace and terminating someplace. Where is it? Where's the terminus at? And the answer was, well, we don't really know. The current flows from east to west down there. So we would assume that it ends up, out in the Gulf of Mexico someplace, or Gulf of America someplace. And I don't think it was me that asked. I think somebody else asked, well, how fast is it moving? And he said, well, we don't really know how much of a current there is. There's just not that much data down that deep. So we're going to pump this stuff 1 million gallons a month through the upper Floridan, through the lower Floridan, only have to test this untreated stuff in this well every 5 years, and we really don't know where it's ending up. So needless to say, when Bob and I sat down and had some conversation, he's got photos from an injection well that he was involved with out in Hawaii that has just created tremendous environmental damage on the reef. And while we're sitting there, he said, Bob, and I don't want to put words in your mouth either, but I think it's factual. He said, most of these things are built along the coast in South Florida. Now, I don't know what the reasoning for that is, other than they can get it out into the Atlantic or the Gulf and nobody worries about it then. But to have one built in the center part of the state is unusual. And when you look at the presentation that I've got in there for backup, the slide that they've got in there that shows existing injection wells, The majority of them are all along the coast. One last thing, and I'll shut up about this. Midland, Texas, which he brought to my attention. Midland, Texas is a hub to the petroleum industry. Back in 2007, Midland, Texas filed a complaint against a company. I don't have the company written down here, but they filed a complaint against one of the petroleum companies that was operating an injection well. They had a breakthrough. So the petroleum byproducts of petroleum waste got up and contaminated their groundwater. That was back in 2007. In 2010, that petroleum company filed bankruptcy, and in 2026, still today, Midland, Texas is still trying to clean up their groundwater. That is one of 500 cases in Texas of breakthroughs.
Skata Bob, Floral City. This is certainly quite unexpected, and it's a last-minute thing when Jeff brought it to my attention. I have the unhonorable experience to actually perform the SCADA and control system programming in the state of Hawaii at the Lahaina wastewater treatment plant. That means that I did the programming for, or to design the programming for the deep well injection, which failed about 10 years after that. I think there's something that's really important. The pictures you saw was from a wastewater treatment plant. That was high nitrogen. Okay, the 130 wells in Florida are along the coast. The one that's the furthermost in the center of Florida is in Ocala. If you look at the hydrology of Florida, the aquifer and most of the water resources are in the center of Florida, flowing outward to each coast. So the ones along the southern coast are mostly wastewater treatment facilities. However, there's 5 or 7 of them are deep well injection. So for all of our education, I think it's important that you know the difference between high nitrogen wastewater versus a deep well injection from a landfill. So on the photos I just gave you, the photo on the first page is one of the 4 deep well injections from a wastewater treatment plant. Leachate is probably one of the most uncontrolled concoctions of chemical created by mankind. And I mean that because we don't know what it is. It is a concoction of unbelievable chemicals. It's a result of the collection of everything which is undesirable by mankind and settles at a liquid into the bottom of a landfill. That's what it is. I'd like you to take a look at the second page, and I gave you, there's a lot of different breakthroughs. Breakthrough is when it goes outside of the casing, and then it starts to come back up. Eventually, it could work its way all the way to the surface. In our case, 3,000 feet down, it's going to work into the aquifers above it. There's about 4 or 5 levels of our aquifer at different areas. So the second page is mainly some of the more historic ones. The one that in 1990, there were 20 municipal breakthroughs in Florida. 20 of them broke through in Florida in 1990. So let's focus on leachate. I want you to look at the third page, and you have a graph. This lists all of the main categories of chemicals that are found in leachate. So there's a little bit of a chemistry class here. Heavy metals, inorganics, iron and zinc, ammonia, phosphorus and sulfate, acids, and 2 different types of acids. But here are the 3 I want to talk about, because the last 3 to me are extremely harmful to mankind. Aromatic hydrocarbons, that's like your gasolines, your benzene, the toluene, ethylbenzene, and xylene. Phenols, pesticides, and polyethylene, and PCBs and dioxins. These are all found in various quantities in leachate. So look at the next page here, and here's the heart of what I want you to walk away with. This concoction of chemicals causes cancer, serious cancer. Benzene, strongly linked to leukemia. ethylbenzene, lung, liver, and kidney cancer. Toluene and xylene, toxic to the central nervous system. Pentachlorophenol is carcinogenic to humans. It's a wood preservative. BPA, which is biphenyl, ovarian or breast cancer, and non-Hodgkin lymphoma. Polychlorinated biphenyls, or PCBs, malignant melanoma. And it also promotes the growth of existing tumors. Responsibility that Citrus County has, and the design and the investment we made in our expansion cell 4A, and the great expense of the lining. Why is the lining so important? Why did the county spend so much money designing cell 4A? Is to protect it from the leachate getting into the aquifer. Congratulate all of you and everyone on the staff for building cell 4A because it keeps all of these carcinogens out of our drinking water.